Okay. So today, it's gonna be a little bit of a different Sunday. Me and a group went to our regional conference, this last week. And we're gonna talk a little bit about what they taught us and maybe how it impacted us. And maybe some things we can try to, we'll just let, Mike and Robin are gonna come up and speak, and then I'll speak as well. So there might be a lot of stuff that's kind of overlaps because it was, but I'm thinking we may have heard some different things in that. So, which one of you wanna go first? Can you turn this one on? Oh, it is on. Yeah.
Hey Scott, can we have each one swap that little clip so it records, please? Thank you, sweetie.
All right, so we went to the fireworks last night up at Aussie, and Scott and Doug were taking bets on how long I was gonna talk. He said we had 10 minutes, so they were betting on, oh, it'll be long. So I wrote everything down because it must be a clean thing that we did off page and just, So, I enjoyed this weekend, that day and a half that we were there. And, so I just wrote down some things that spoke to me. So first of all, the guy's name that spoke was J.R. Briggs, and he's from Fresh Expressions. And one of the first things he talked about is being gathered to scattered, which means we gather and then we go out. And it's about becoming a church for our community. Maybe not this community right here, but the community that you live in or you work in. So one of the things that was said was every church has a strategy for gathering, but few have a strategy for scattering, which he referred, the Great Commission, I'm gonna read it. Matthew 28:19. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Which is our purpose. So one of the things that he talked about that really just struck me was the statement, every Christian is disguised as a good neighbor or a missionary. So we need to go into our communities and just be good neighbors. It doesn't mean we have to say, hi, I'm Robin, I'm a Christian, and I want to, tell you something. That's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's bad. So there's this gentleman, his name is Holiday Hayden, and he's from Oak Grove Church up by Columbia City. And this guy is the epitome of this statement. He is disguised. He has long hair, he has earrings, he pulls his hair back. I don't know if he has tattoos or whatever, but he's he's working toward a pastor, right? But he has this thing that he created with his kid, which is called Hockey Church. And what he does is his son is playing hockey all over. He wants to play in the NHL, so they travel on weekends, and he's really wanting to do this. So his wife is the worship leader of the church, so she takes him to his practices during the week, and then Holiday takes him on the weekends to where he plays. And Holiday told him, he said, even though we're not at church, we're going to have church on, that Sunday for the weekends. And he got thinking, there might be more people, same situation. So this has just become a hockey church where they gather, they have devotion, they pray before the hockey game, and then they go out and they play hockey. So, and that's something he does every weekend. So that's kind of what this whole Fresh Expressions thing is about. I may not make any sense. If I don't make any sense, talk to me and, ask me. So one of the other things was a large percentage of people will not step into our churches. That doesn't mean they don't want to know, but a lot of them are not gonna step into our churches. So there was another gentleman that talked about, what's it called, the Brew Crew, I think that's what it was called. And he started this, they have a brewery in their town, and they have food trucks, and these are kids that he coached them in, like, football, and has always known these guys. Well, these guys were really struggling. I mean, I think he said some of them there was a few that had DUIs, some that had been in jail, some had an unplanned pregnancy, they were in their 20s. And he just said, hey, let's just meet up here, And it has turned into, they meet up every week, and it has turned into where now the guys are coming, they're bringing Bibles, and they're studying, and, they're getting deeper into that, and they're sharing that with others and bringing others into it. So, he said, everyone is wired for discipleship. And all people are being discipled, but to what? To Christ or to things of this world? So another thing he said was, it's not about inherited churches, which would be existing churches or like our traditional church, or emerging churches, which would be like contemporary churches or anything. It's not either. It's and both. Got to work together. It's not a, them and us. Now, am I making any sense? Any questions? So, one of the things he also talked about was shifting our culture in traditional church. So, in the culture of our church, question for you. What do we celebrate? And what do we tolerate? What did Jesus celebrate? What did Jesus tolerate? And he suggested that, and I would challenge everybody to this, to read Jesus' parables and describe the culture, the adjectives of that culture at that time. Those same adjectives that described that culture in Jesus' time should describe the culture of our church. So, what should we start celebrating and what should we stop tolerating? And this guy talked about this church that he's a pastor at, and he said, by no means, we are not Pentecostal at all. But he said, I told the people of our church, he said, when we baptize people, I want, when they come up out of the water, I want them to hear cheering and, everything, because this is a great moment. The angels in heaven are celebrating, and we should be. Then he went on to say, Philadelphia is where he's at. He goes, the Philadelphia Eagles are a big thing. And he said, I told them, I know you guys are going to go home, and in 2 hours you're going to be watching a football game. They're going to cross that, score a touchdown, and you're going to be jumping up and down and hooting and hollering off your couch. He said, that's what we need to be doing when people are baptized. He said, they have air horns, they have cowbells, and he said, a lot of people say that's their favorite service is baptism because it's such a celebration. He actually said then too, more cowbell. Does anybody get that? That reference? No?
Yes.
Saturday Night Live, more cowbell?
Yeah.
Come on, Grant. So, and this is done, he also said, this is done in increments. It's not an overnight thing. It's not like we're gonna say, oh, here's an idea, let's just do it. We can't do that because, like Scott has said when we were there, he said, we hear all these things and we get all these ideas and we get all excited, and then we get back and they just kind of don't go anywhere. So, we need to always hope for the future. Hope will change the world, but hope is not a strategy. Culture is created by what we celebrate. What do we care most about? Do we care about the church past? Do we care about the church present? Or do we care about the church future? What is our church? I have an opinion what our church, I think our church is present. Back when I was growing up, I would have said it would have been the past, because it was always about, oh, we can't stop doing peanut brittle, we've always done peanut brittle, or we can't stop doing the fish fry, because we've always done the fish fry, you know, that's the past things. So, and he's also said, this also determines the culture of your church. So, the idea of this is not like for us to have another class, or for us to have a committee to do something. It's what can you get involved in that you're in your community, where you're at. He told a story about a hairdresser who they have been talked about being, we're all missionaries, we all are commissioned. She actually came up after service and said, okay, so when are we gonna do all this? He's like, what do you mean? She's like, I wanna be commissioned in her hair salon. I want you to commission me as a missionary where I work. So, the elders, we laid hands on her, we commissioned her, and you know what? It just caught on, and there were tons of people in that same place that they were saying, I want you to commission me at the police station, I want you to commission me for the fire department, I want you to commission me for my A.G. Edwards office, whatever. So, that's what it's all about. And I don't, and I'll be honest, I don't do this. This isn't like something I'm saying you need to be doing. This is something I need to be doing, and it starts with me. So, the idea is, where are you at? Where do you work? What groups do you hang out with? And start brainstorming. Imagine. I wonder, what if? And he also said, you may not always be successful, but failure is not fatal. We learn, we try, we fail, and you just repeat it. He talked about something that he had an idea about, and it was a total flop. But he also said it's because I did it all on my own. I didn't rely on anybody else but myself. So my one question is, there was a question about what limitations do we put on our church? Can somebody answer that? What kind of limitations do we put on our church?
We're not big enough.
Yep, we're small. We're out in the middle of a cornfield.
We don't have no money.
We have no money. We have no money. We're an older congregation. What can we do?
Don't say that word.
What, Karen?
She said, don't say that word.
Some of us are older than others. But anyway, so the whole idea is we need to shift those limitations to opportunities. So we're small. So we're out in the middle of the cornfield. So we have an older congregation. That doesn't mean we're, dead and can't do anything anymore. So we need to figure out how do we shift our limitations to opportunity, and how can you do that where God has placed you, at your job, where you hang out, like coffee shops or the grocery store you go to, and go to the same register every single time and get to know that person, and you just don't know what can happen. So, and again, it's not about what we do is wrong, or traditional church, but we just have to, we're gathered to learn, to support, to encourage, and then we scatter to wherever we are. If you think about this church, we have people that come from Bluffton, Hoagland, Fort Wayne, everywhere. I mean, we have a huge area that we can impact. And it may not be a huge area, and maybe God wants you, there's one or two people that you work with that He wants you to impact. So we just have to look for those opportunities, and I need to look for those opportunities. This starts with me. I am, we talk about that as a council and leaders. We can't expect anybody else to do it if I'm not doing it? If the leaders of the church are not doing it and setting examples, you can't, that doesn't work. So, that's what I got out of it. God wants us to, be a missionary where we're at. And I've always heard that, like, oh yeah, be a missionary where you're at. Like, yeah. But this just really like, yeah, I need to be. So I'm hoping that, I can keep that in my mind, that I can look for opportunities, and not rush into anything. You know, God will lead you, prayer, talking to somebody about your ideas or whatever. So, that's all I have. Thanks. Who wanted that? Oh, well. Oh, yeah. So that just recorded me.
So I want to start out, I've been off this cane for a month. Somehow, and about a little over a week ago, I twisted my knee. There's no bruises, it don't hurt when I do this. The doctor says take ibuprofen. I guess that's part of getting old. You know, you hurt yourself and you wonder, how'd that happen? So I am getting better, and look forward to dropping this thing again someday here. It's funny how different ears hear different things, but yet it all kind of combines together. Robin, that was insightful, and I was right there. You know, one of the things I want to just tell you a short story about being a missionary right where you're at by accident. Maybe not accident. Ann and I frequent a restaurant in Bluffton, and over the last 6 months or so, we tend to get somewhat the same waitresses. And we just, not even thinking about it, cultivated a relationship with both of them that has led to very close friendships. One was a high school senior that graduated, and we did not know her from Adam. So we got talking to her, and just out of curiosity, we asked about her life outside of the restaurant, because she always felt like she was there every time we were there. Probably not again by accident, but very hard working young lady. And within a few months, Ann and her and I had cultivated a close relationship, and it floored me when she asked us to come to her graduation. In doing that, opens up the door to planting seeds, cultivating, and watching what grows out of that. So it just floored us, and she was very close to us, very close to Ann, a lot of things in common. And so another thing that happened was with another waitress that we go there with. We'd been to a car show, and it was late, so we wanted to get something to eat, and we went there, and we ended up closing the restaurant and walked back out to the old car that we got, and when you know, I locked the keys in the car. Now you can't hardly do that these days, but them old cars, you can lock the keys in. And so I ended up sitting out there, and we called the police department and said, can you come and open the car for us? And So they took a little while getting out there, just, 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but that gave time for this lady's husband came to pick her up, and he was sitting there, and he saw us sitting on the big curb there, and he came over and said, wanted to know about the car and this and that. Then he started talking about church, and I thought, here's an opportunity that I didn't go looking for, but it showed up. Was it an accident that we locked the keys in our car? Well, yeah, but maybe not all. So we talked to him for quite a while, and turns out that he used to be, and I hope I'm saying it right, a youth pastor at another church. Well, even turned out more than that, they're looking for another church. And for them to get the full experience, I said, give us a couple weeks. Pastor's on vacation. So I wanted them to experience who we are, all of us, And in doing that, we're gonna invite them, and I always say if I invite somebody, I also dangle a little fish. I'll take you out for lunch. I add that to every time I invite somebody. Now, do I get people to respond? Not very often, but maybe this once, that'd be great. Just one more person for the kingdom and for the betterment of this church. So in going to these classes that we went to, kind of aligned with being open to God's request of you. And you say, well, I'm not sure that's really from God. I feel like I should do X, Y, Z, whatever it is. I feel like. If you feel like it, God is telling you, I need you to do this. And all you need to do is take that first step. Or if it's not up your wheelhouse, look at somebody else here in church and say, hey, I got this person that really could use you, whatever it might be. And if somebody asks me, well, can you help me with this or that? I know enough people right here. I'm sure one of us can figure out how to help that person. And going to these classes opens our minds to looking at situations in such a different way. I thought for sure I knew how to do a lot of things. I know how to look at things and be, objective about it. But when I went to these classes, it just opened my mind to so many things. I mean, I went in there thinking, I hope this ain't boring. Because you're sitting in class, you're sitting in an auditorium for 2 days, and you have breakouts, which means you have these special speakers, and they present special little classes, it's like 15-minute classes or whatever. And so you pick which class would interest you, and you go to where these classes are, and then you come back. And there's praise music that I've never heard before, but I sure enjoyed. I just want to thank you for the opportunity that all of you have given us. It's huge, and I hope it makes a difference. And I have ideas already how I want to grow this community. And I hope you sitting there today thinking, what can I do to help somebody? Not only just here, but in your everyday lives. Like they say, start a church where you are. And starting a church might be just when you get together, you discuss certain things. We all have interests, but you have opportunities to add in God's word in the conversations. I've always looked for just my so-so friends or friends that I try to be close to because they seem like they just so lonely in this world. And I've got a friend in Marvel that, you know, we've had hard times, we've had good times. But I see his need. And I think he sees some of my needs. I've been working on him and subtly, to come to church here. And even lunch doesn't draw so far. But maybe someday, you know, I'm not giving up. So I did write down some things, and like I said, you know, we all were there and seen different things, heard different things. Family, extended family, and the church family are all areas that we can participate in being aware of the hardships, the needs, the celebrations, the good times, but make an effort to go out into somebody every day and make their life just a little bit better. Then they asked, who in your life, relational, can you say, you know, that person really could use an opportunity to hear the word. In my own life, I'm sure there's many, but one was my friend in Marvel, and the other is my brother Steve and my brother Clark. Now Steve, I know he's a Christian. He goes to a church that his wife's been going to for a long time, and I really appreciate some conversations I have with him, but I know I don't dare talk about politics with him. And my little brother Clark, he's been so lost in his lives for ever since, you know, he was a toddler. He thinks different, and I've had some very rough roads where I cut off relationship with him for probably 4 or 5 years. And it come to me one Sunday, and I thought, I wanna see him in heaven. Do I dare not mend that relationship because of my own stubbornness? And thank God here a few months ago, he put on my heart to get right with the people that I've wronged. I didn't question whether it really came from him or if it was just my own greed, selfishness, pride. So I got in contact with him and my youngest sister. I'd wronged her and said some things I shouldn't have said. I didn't mean it the way it came out, but that's the way she took it. And it was 2 years that I've never heard from her, and I never even thought anything was wrong because our family just don't get together anymore. Well, it dawned on me just what it was. And I called her and begged her forgiveness. And she forgave me. And I told her, I said, you know, I'm not putting you on the spot to forgive me, because forgiveness comes from the person. It shouldn't be coerced in pressure. So she forgave me, and now we're talking again. And that could have been a relationship that run out of time, and she's going through so much stuff right now with her husband and her children. But when God puts that on you, please act on it. If you're wrong, you're wrong. And she asked me, after we got done talking, she asked me, why did you call me after all this time? She wanted to know if I was dying. I am dying. Everybody's dying. Do we have tomorrow? We're not promised tomorrow. What if you die and you've held a grudge against somebody that you've not made right? Do you know what it says in the Bible about that? It says, I don't have the passage, but it says, what you hold bound on earth will be bound in heaven. We don't have sometimes even tomorrow. So please make your relationships right. And this is just a combination of everything that I was hearing there that got brought up into my mind. God puts you in places that brings up life. Okay, that's what was brought up in my mind. Evangelism outside of church. The same guy, Holiday, he also pastors leads a cowboy church, and it's people that are, likes to ride horses, all that kind of stuff. And it was funny because I know a guy over in Toledo, Ohio, that is a pastor for the cowboy church too, and I thought that was just over there, but apparently it's, a pretty big thing. And you wouldn't think about a bunch of friends riding horses that also have church. And there's motorcycle clubs. I know a very good friend of mine that is in a Christian motorcycle club, and he speaks at their time that they get together, their prayers, and they all like to ride together. So what hobby do you have, or where are you at in a regular place in life? Restaurants, church here, people outside the door, the family that you know. Where can you start a church? And now, saying church, I tell you, saying church is not just, coming for an hour once a week and you call that church. That is not church. That is a refreshment of your mind and soul, and it encourages you. It's supposed to encourage you to go out there and spread the word. God's disciples didn't stay in just one place. They were scattered too. And that's where we get the idea of become a Christian here. And even if you think you don't know enough, all you gotta do is look at the book. It's a manual, ask somebody and work out conversation in everyday life places. And that's how I made those two friends that we have in a restaurant. And I wonder sometimes, what other places? Okay, for example, y'all know that Ann and I, we love going to car shows, and there are some strange characters that love to drive old cars, and I wonder sometimes about what their message is. So we went down to Hartford City last week. There was only it was a 4-H fair, there was only 20 cars there, but one of them was a Lincoln Hearst. So I love big cars. So I went over to talk to this kid, all dressed in black. He had an Oldsmobile Hearst, and he had a casket and a skeleton, and that was his thing. He wore all black. He carried around a black umbrella to keep his skin white, and I was just curious, how did he get into that? Well, went over to him, started talking to him about his life choices, if you know what I mean. He just went on, and I mean, it was just like I flipped on a switch and all this started coming out, and I think, I appreciate your car, I want to talk to you about your car, but it was that opportunity for him to open up, and he started somehow talking about how his lifestyle choices has beat him down. And he was telling me that Christians would leave notes on his windshield, because he drives his car as the main car that he has. And people would rip out pages out of the Bible and leave it on his car. How much faster can you turn away one of God's children than to attack somebody like that? Now, I know that we hate the sin, but we love the sinner, because we are all sinners. who are we to judge somebody? We're not to judge people. And I worked in conversation with them pretty quick. I said, and Ann was with me, I said, just so you know, Ann and I are Christians, but I also want you to know that I'm not here to judge you. That's not my job. He kind of, huh? Because everybody's been judging. And I also worked in a couple times, you know, God loves you. I said, He loves you as much as He loves me. I just want you to know that He does love you, believe it or not. And he said, oh yeah, I used to go to church when I was a kid, and he said, when I was a little kid, I was really wronged. I don't know what happened to him. He didn't say exactly what it was, but I can only imagine. He was badly wronged when he was a child, and that turned him away from going to church. He didn't say that he didn't believe or that he believed, but I like to think God put me and Ann in that place, in that situation, to talk to him and maybe plant a little seed. Well, I hope I run into him again someday. I sit there, after I talked to him for a while, I had to go sit down again, and I sit there and I watched his car, and not one of the 20 drivers that came in there went over to talk to him. How many Christians were in that 20? Are you one of those 20s? And what will you do when you see an opportunity, even though he didn't show like he was hurting? I know he was. He was there to put on a show, maybe to tick some people off or whatever it was. But I just saw the opportunity to go over and befriend him, and know in my own heart, I don't agree with it, but he doesn't need to hear that. He already knows. I told him, I said, we're Christians. So he knows the way I think and believe, but I didn't beat him over the head with it, you know. He's not gonna open up to you. I just hope that somebody in your life needs to hear your forgiveness. Whether they forgive you or not, at least you've done what God has asked you to do. Sorry, I'm going a little bit off track, but how do we build community with other churches and families? Thankfully, we have the Zanesville Church to build community with and have them come alongside of us and we alongside of them, and the opportunities that we have to help stock the Christian closet there with what they need. But we need to do more than that. We do it with, you know, not only churches, but our friends, that we can, you know, say, hey, I have this idea, can you help me? And it's so much easier to do something if you're alongside of a friend or a family member that is enthusiastic about it as you are. Church taking places outside, like our pavilion or anywhere, opens up people to come to, if they're a little more shy to come into the building, be out there at the pavilion when we do it out there, kind of opens it up. They don't feel so, you know, closed in. I had my friend in Markle, I kept talking to him about coming and stuff, and he goes, well, he says, if I come, I don't want to be put up front. I don't want people to come and shake my hand and tell them how happy they are to see me, and I would just want to hear what's going on and not be, you know, pressured. I said, I'll tell you what, I said, there's back row seats. I said, I'll sit with you back there, and soon as church is over, you can make a beeline for the parking lot and you're scot-free, and hoping that eventually he'll become hungry and want to stay longer. My dad had a saying that all good Christians sit in the back. So, different things like, in evangelism, the guy talked about, opening up, talking to people with humor and making light of, certain things that would put people more at ease. You know, if you come at them just, that they're gonna close down. But if you open up with humor and, sometimes that's hard to do, but they say that, you know, even the best way to teach a class is to be relaxed, be, you know, somebody that people can talk to and, relate to. That's how I tried to relate to a certain level with that guy at the car show, is we had cars in common. We all have something in common with everybody. It's just finding out what that is, being open, and humor always helps that. Changing evangelism, don't be put in a box, meet God's people where they are. Don't be put in a box. Sometimes I feel like, if I come right out and say, hey, I'm Christian, you know, like you were saying, that's putting me in a box, and people don't wanna be put in a box, just like my friend from Marble. Don't put them in a box, and don't you be put in a box. Be real. And if not going out and making an effort, a minded effort to, meet people where they are, that's putting the, you know, in a box. Do it your way. God's never said what, you know, is the wrong or right way to bring somebody to him. He just said, bring him to me. I love them all. Another way to kind of break the ice, and I say this, ask invasive questions. Not, and I say invasive, it's just as simple as, what's your family background? You know, where do you go? What do you believe in? Simple things like, you know, how many kids do you have? All of that opens the door to you, just a little bit, because they can, you know, relate, well, this is what I'm proud of. This is, you know, what I'm happy with. And when they start to open up that little bit of a door, you start to learn more and more about your life. This young lady that invited us to her graduation party is amazing. She paid for the whole thing herself. She's going to college, paying for it herself. She works like 2 jobs, and she's a high school, or was a high school senior. That's amazing. And that opens up the door to start talking to her about her she ended up having a boyfriend, getting a boyfriend, and she was against, you know, she didn't want anything to slow her down, so she has this boyfriend that she went to prom with. And we happened to be in the restaurant that her and her boyfriend went to for prom, you know, dinner. And they come in, and she made a beeline right for our table, and he started walking around, and where'd she go? Who? She got back to the table, and she told him. He says, well, who was that? She goes, I'm just friends from my restaurant job. So you never know where or how you can affect a person. Another good way is, we all have our own story in life. And whether you think it's meaningful, big, little, whatever it is, somebody needs to hear your life story. And no way is there a better way to get to know a person when you can sit down and start talking about each other's life stories. You learn so much. And just the, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours that we were in the car, I don't think Scott and I ever shut up. And that opportunity We talked about what we learned in these classes. We talked about our own lives. We talked about the end of our lives and how we saw that, or even just thought about it. You know, I come up with weird questions sometimes, but Scott never fails to talk to me about it and be open about it. Makes me feel comfortable and also makes me feel loved by everybody. And for a lot of years, I never had that. So a guy named Jacob there, I took one of his breakout sessions, found out he was he worked in the military, and what he did was help build the Stratocaster, the biggest cargo ship that the military uses. And he told me one time that they were out on the runway, and they always have to test these airplanes before they turn them over for regular use. Well, this airplane took off, come back, and he was getting ready to land, and one of his main landing gears wouldn't come down, and it was the ones, you know, under the wings. And so somebody beside him said, "There's nothing we can do but let's pray." And so they all gathered together around him and prayed, and those pilots came out all right. Didn't, you know, blow up the plane or nothing, but the pilots came out all right. He just really, really impressed me. He's from Georgia, and I wish that, you know, I could have him in my life here. He's such an impressive guy. You know, he does these speaking things, and works in his own little churches that he has. But the opportunity to meet people that connect with you in such a deep way was the opportunity that we had to go there. I didn't think I'd ever connect with anybody there, but boy, did I connect with him. He was like, I could be a good friend. You know, I just loved how he looked at life and how he lived it, and it was just phenomenal. And he made us draw a picture of our community. Where do you spend the most time? And, you know, he had on there his church, what restaurant he likes, they go to all the time, and, you know, different things. It was like one big circle. And that was, he had us do that, and you don't wanna see mine, but what that does is kind of brings out in your mind, where do you spend the most time in your life from week to week? And is that a place that you can open up conversation with somebody, and like I say, start your own little church? There's good possibilities in that. Just explore discipleship and how churches take shape. Situational awarenesses. Be aware of conversation with people that you wouldn't think you'd have anything to do with it, but you know, you might learn something that God put you there for that certain reason. God put you there to do something for him, and he's asking you to do it without question. Because although Jesus begged for the cup to be passed from him, he didn't question God's reasoning behind it. He knew it. He knew what it was. So, you know, I always look at what Jesus done for me. I cannot question, I cannot be afraid of anything that he puts in front of me. I might be a little nervous, but I always try to listen. sometimes when, we're out in our community, it's good to have some kind of, opening questions that you can use to, ease the situation into meeting a person or trying to help solve the situation, argument, fights, whatever it is, wherever you are. It's always good to have a few, things that you can use and just keep those in your mind. Don't think that it's always gonna come to you, because sometimes it don't. So you're better off to have something to open with, and then it'll go from there, you know, it'll roll like a rock. You can ask about their hopes and desires. Everybody has hopes and desires in life up till the day we die. So if you wonder about how or what I can talk to about this person, I don't know them, I don't have anything in common with them. Simple situation, if you see there's pain in their face, you know, just ask them about their hopes and desires in life. What's going on with their, can we sit down and talk, you know? Ask about their families and jobs and their beliefs. After you start opening and you start talking about their family and jobs, it always opens up then that you can talk to them about their beliefs. Yeah, I don't wanna take up the whole hour, but, please pray about how you lead your everyday lives, cause there's somebody around you that needs you. And God always needs you. Please pay attention to what He has for you.
So my take on this whole thing is actually almost detrimental to Fairview Church. Because fresh inspection, what they was teaching me was, I'll give you an example. A guy used battleships. A long time ago, they trained their captains and all the crew on how to make a battleship go by burning coal. They were coal-fired ships. Today, they are nuclear ships, nuclear reactor ships. That's how they get their energy. That's how they're propelled. So would you take and use that same training that they used back in the early 1900s as they would today? And so this is more about, Robin said, people are coming, there are people out there that will not come to this church, and they may never come to this church. Fresh Expressions is going out to those people. We actually have some examples of fresh expressions, and Mike mentioned some. Grant and Alana is a perfect example of fresh expressions. The thing that Jacob Bernsey said at this meeting that really caught my attention was, he is a bivocational pastor. He has a job. He has so much of, the last thing he wants is another ministry or something on his plate. But a fresh expression is going to a grocery store, going to the same clerk and building a relationship with them. And out of that, this is a Muslim lady, and out of that, she invited them to eat a meal with her. It's about building relationships. And it's an opportunity to gain their trust, and it gives you a right to then, when you start talking, you get deeper and deeper. That's when things can happen. That's when Jesus can come. A quote by Hugh Halter: evangelism is changing people's assumptions about God and His people. And he talked a lot about experiments. We call them ministries or programs, and them are scary. when you use the word experiment, what is an experiment? You try something, and if it fails, you go on and you try something. Robin said failure is not fatal. Failure is part of growing. I'm just trying to skip around here. And so Fresh Expressions is about the places you go, the people you are in contact with, building relationships with them, and things may come out of it. That Hollywood guy, he bought his wife on his second anniversary plane rides in an acrobatic airplane. He bought them for him and her. That was their second. To fly in the, I don't know if you've ever seen acrobatic airplanes, but. So he put his wife in the airplane first, strapped her all in, and then he thought, oh, what did I just do? And what he did was he laid his hands on the pilot and his wife and prayed for his wife and the pilot in the plane. And when he got done praying, the pilot looked at him like, what was that? Long story short, that one moment, just being where he was at, turned into, he has a ministry with the aerobatic competitions all around the United States, and now he's actually going to the Worlds this year. He prays for the pilots before they start. He has church with the pilots and their families and whoever wants to come, because he was just being, he had no anticipating, he wasn't anticipating starting a ministry. What do I do? What do I need to be? He was just being. He was just being where he was at. None of us want more things to do. So one thing that I thought about, I don't want any more things to do. I don't want somebody to come and ask me to do things. I don't want anything more added to my plate. And so I thought, well, how does this look in my life? Well, I like me and my wife like taking rides on our ATVs. That's something we enjoy doing. Last year we took some friends and we would just ride around the community and get to know people in the community. And I thought that's nice. But what if it looked like, what would it look like if there are other people in the community that like riding ATVs and we just go for a ride together? And not with the expectations of teaching them the Bible or telling them they're sinners and going to hell, but just building relationships with them. And then somebody said we need to use the pavilion more. And so then I was thinking, well, what if we had a group of people that rode once a month? We just go for a ride and just enjoy it, and then we come back here and have a meal in the pavilion. And those are the kinds of things that are fresh expressions. But they said, the thing is, they still may never step foot in this church, but that may be their church. So out of that, what I just said, eventually there would be an opportunity to speak about Christ and maybe a short devotion or something, but that might be their church. The church, the inherited church, the traditional churches, they showed a picture of a dock at a lake that was built to be used to pull their boat up to, and the water receded a lot to where the dock was just dry. And that was a picture of yesterday's church, where we build them and they come. Your parents force you to, church was relevant. This building was relevant. And unfortunately, it's not relevant to people anymore. It's relevant to me, and we need this church. But it's not relevant to other people. And that's where the bringing the two together work. One thing that was said is, what's needed is probably not more information. When Robin was talking about limitations, we think, oh, I don't know enough. I don't know the Bible. What's needed is probably not more information. What's needed is courage and imagination. I'm just going to finish with this quote. Somebody, I don't know who wrote it, but it says, I'd rather have religious people get mad at me and my church for loving sinners too much than to be accepted by a holy huddle of self-righteous churchgoers who agree on the sins we are against. This guy said, everybody's not welcome in his church. That ain't makes sense to me. What do you mean not everybody's welcome in? He said, the rule at our church is you must be imperfect to walk into our church. Meaning self-righteous, perfect people are detrimental to a healthy church, because self-righteous, perfect people tend to judge and look down and put themselves on a pedestal. And we don't have time to discuss all this, but Fresh Expressions is about living out what we learn here in our lives. It's about, when they went to be missionaries, you know what? They dropped everything, and their total focus was on sharing Christ with a group of people. When I go to work, that is not my total focus, but that should be my total focus. When I was driving home yesterday, I was thinking about cruise control. You know what I have to do to worry about going down the road when I have my cruise control set? Absolutely nothing. When I come to a hill, the car speeds up automatically. When it comes down, it slows down. And I go through life the exact same way on cruise control. I don't have to worry about anything. But I'm being a follower of Jesus Christ. You have to be aware. You have to see and understand what's going on. And awareness is a big. Awareness is a big thing. I mean, if I go to my job knowing that I was commissioned as a missionary at Northern Wales Community Schools, I may have a little bit of a different attitude than I'm an employee at Northern Wales Community Schools, and I happen to be a Christian. But if my focus is every opportunity that I have to build a relationship, and I'm not talking about sharing Christ and speaking the Bible, but getting to know that person, and people start opening up, and then it's an opportunity to say, hey, I've been through some tough times like that, and Christ got me through that. Or Fresh Expressions was just another way to say the same thing over and over and over. They just did it in a way that was really good. But experimentation was the biggest thing. It's an experiment. Try it. And it's not about the church doing something. It's about you in your life. But that don't mean we don't involve the church, because we need prayer. I can go to somebody and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, and somebody let's pray. God, you know I love church, and I love learning, and I love our Bible studies, and I love spending time with these people. I love spending time with like-minded people. God, there are a group of people, a large group of people, that are going to hell, that have no hope. Our lives are going to go by quickly. Their lives are going to go by quickly. So God, I just pray as we go out here today, as we go to the grocery stores, as we go to our jobs, as we go to gatherings and whatever it may be, I pray that we can be a light in this dark world. Pray that we can give hope in this world. Pray that we can see people around us and be aware of what's going on around us. And not only just notice it, but maybe see what we can do about it, how we can help. Maybe, I don't know, God. God, I know that my life is short. I know people that don't know your son, Jesus. I'm around a lot of people that don't know your son. So So God, help me to open my eyes, to quit worrying about this building. Quit worrying about how can I get people into this building. And start focusing on how I can introduce people to Jesus. God, this church is important. The people that come to this church are important. But it's not the most important thing. Jesus left the 99 to save the one. So God, as Robin said, you know, we learn a lot about how to be gathered on Sundays. We have strategies for that. But we have very little strategy on how to go out of this building and be the church. So help us to be the church. God, thank you for being a God who cares, and thank you for being a God who will continually and always pursue, who will always guide and protect and lead and love. Help us to do the same. I pray all these things in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.